audiences?
Yeah, this is my audience. Today, the right to vote is largely taken for granted. Our excuses are that we don't have enough time, the system is rigged, and the list goes on and on. I'm going to take you through the history of the right to vote movement, talk about some people who fought for your right, people who live in countries who do not have the right, and I'm going to finally inform you how you can take the first step in making a difference in the country's direction. Let's start with African Americans. We all know how they fought for their freedom, but were you aware that they fought for their right to vote as well? And they won it in 1870 after the Civil War when the 15th Amendment was passed. Some will discount this and say that African Americans were not able to vote until the 1965 Voting Acts Amendment. But what this act did was actually reinforce the 15th Amendment because of the intimidation and harassment the Southerners were giving African Americans when they attempted to vote. But African Americans weren't the only ones who were not able to vote. Women also had to fight for their right. We've all heard of Susan B. Anthony, but most of us don't know why. Susan B. Anthony was pivotal in the role of women's suffrage. Someone you may not have heard of is Alice Paul. She believed that women had the right to vote, and she believed it so strongly that she and her fellow suffragists picketed the White House for 2.5 years. They were spit at, they were despised, they were beaten, left unconscious, and jailed. But she never gave up, and it's because of her and women like her that in 1920 the 19th Amendment was passed and gave women the right to vote. Just to give you a little history, the Constitution does not actually give us the right to vote. This is left to the states. Usually you had to be male, you had to own property, you had to have enough money to pay taxes. That's when the federal government stepped in and clarified for its citizens voting rights in the way of amendments, 2 of which I've already spoken of. So the big question is why? Why should you vote? Benjamin Franklin is said to have said when he left the Constitutional Convention in 1787 that the founders have given the nation a republic. Now let's see if we can keep it. And by that, he meant that it is our duty to keep informed on what's going on in our nation politically, and that we should come up with an informed decision as to the political ideas that we support, and that we should vote our conscience on voting day. There are many countries that do not have the right to vote, and their citizens would gladly trade places with us in the United States. Many countries do. Cuba, China, and Vietnam, you may not be aware, they're allowed to vote, but there's only one candidate and there's only one party. So they don't have much choice in that. There are still some places such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates which do not allow women to vote at all. Imagine living in one of these countries. You, of course, there do not have the freedoms that we enjoy in America, but remember, freedom comes with a price. If you do not exercise your rights, if you do not become involved in the least little bit, you are bound to lose your freedom. Americans are so used to this life that we lead that they don't believe it'll ever go away. We can't imagine the limited rights that these countries have. Have you ever heard of the Aztecs, the Mayans, Persia, or the Roman Empire? They never thought they would cease to exist as well. My point is, if you don't use it, you will lose it. No matter how great a country we are, if we do not exercise our right to vote, our rights as a nation, we could lose those rights. I don't tell you these things to scare you, but to motivate you to do the one thing that no other people on this earth get to do, and that is to vote in a free society where we can voice our opinions by the politicians we elect. Many people say, well, I'm just one vote. It really won't count. These people are unaware that in the 2000 presidential election, the vote was won just by 600 votes in Florida. The space between losing in Congress and local government is a lot smaller. You should vote because you have a say in who is running this country, and you have completed an act that keeps us free. In order to vote, you must register. In the United States, of the people who are able to vote, only 70% of Americans register. And in the United States, it is our responsibility to register. I urge you to go to registertovote.com and register. They will walk you through the process. They make it simple for you. And usually you have to do it at least 30 days before an election. They will send you a registration card. On that registration card is usually a polling place. If not, you can call your city or local government. They will tell you where your polling place is. It is based on where you live. To recap, it is not only your right, but your responsibility in this country to vote. Many people fought tirelessly. They gave their lives so that we could have the right to be a part of a process to elect people to a government to rule our land. To not vote, to take this gift for granted, is a slap in the face to those who've been fighting since the 1600s for us to have this right. We take for granted the right that many people do not have simply because of the country that we live in. I'm not saying that you have to be totally engrossed in politics that run this country. I'm saying to take 2 simple steps: become informed and vote. Thank you.
That your things